installment of the Injectables EDU Business Blueprint webinar series. Today we are covering a very hot topic, BHRT, and specifically the BHRT business model most practices regret choosing. Now, before we get started, I had just a couple of housekeeping items. Thank you for joining us. If you guys have any questions at any point in time, please enter them in the chat box on your screen. We will be checking them and circling back for the Q&A section. Also, we are recording this webinar, so if you have to drop at any point in time, but you are scared to miss out on all of the insights, fear not. We will send you a copy of the recording after the webinar so you can watch it again and again and again. Also, a quick note to keep our lawyers happy. I'm not even going to read this all the way through because we don't need to keep them that happy, just happy enough that we put it on the screen. So if you want to take a moment and screenshot this for your records, I will give you a quick second to do so. Other than that, we are going to move on to the good stuff. Our main speakers and our hostess with the mostesses, you guys, we have Cassie and Suzanne on the line. Thank you so much for being here with us. Another webinar Wednesday.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
For those of you who do not know Cassie and Suzanne, where have you been? They are our co-founders of Injectables EDU and also owners of their very own successful med spas. You probably see them all over our private Facebook group or on the Injectables EDU website where they are dropping free resources pretty much every week. So if you are not already checking those regularly, please start to do so. But then we have our very special guest speaker, not to steal your thunders, ladies, but we have Nico Misleh here with us today. Hi, Nico. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are very excited. Nico is the founder of HRT University. He is an expert in hormone optimization and practice development. So when we are on the subject of how to make a BRHT program that is profitable, we have the exactly right guy. And he's a familiar face over here at Injectables EDU. Nico has appeared on previous webinars with us, and he is going to be joining us in a little less than 2 months at the Injectables EDU Summit in Orlando.
Yes.
So fun.
Ready to
Cannot
party.
wait.
We are so excited to have you there. And we will just talk about that for a quick second before we get into the good stuff, you guys. Less than 2 months away, the Injectables EDU Summit, we are going to be covering BHRT, memberships program, business compliance, anything that you need to know to either grow or, start a really successful practice. This is the place to be. Keep hanging on till the end of the webinar because we may or may not be giving away a special offer. Spoiler alert, we are, but you have to hang till the very end for the coupon code. But it's going to be so great, and I'm so excited to have so many great people there with us. But without further ado, let's get into the reason you guys are all here today. The BHRT business model most practices regret choosing. Suzanne, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to you and Cass to get us started.
Absolutely. Cassie, why don't you lead it off?
I hear this a lot in our free 20-minute consulting calls is people saying, okay, I'm going to go do BHRT training. And then they're saying, well, I was looking at BioTE or I forget the name of some of the other ones. Nico will definitely be able to speak to that. So I think that same thing with aesthetics turnkey programs, there is some ups and there's also a lot of downsides that you may not realize with some of these turnkey models. So I would love to hear Nico. We'll have to figure out Nico how to get him off mute. But
I'm sorry, I'm muting myself. So
okay, good. I thought we had muted you as the
I'm
host.
here.
I was like, uh-oh. Yeah, Nico, can you tell us a little bit about these turnkey programs, some benefits versus going more the build your own model route?
Yeah. I mean, if I had to steel man the whole thing, I'd say, look, it is a done for you kind of service almost. These guys, BioTE, Avexius, I think is another one, and again, there are many more. They're shiny and flashy, and it's not to say that they don't have good things about them. So I think primarily one being it's turnkey, like Cassie was saying. They're going to give you all the tips and tools. They're going to show you how to do all the procedures. They're going to provide you the medications and all that kinds of stuff. And 3, 2, 1, you're ready to rock and roll. Again, for I think a lot of aesthetic practices, Again, I don't own an aesthetics practice, so I'm very much like a 10,000 foot view here, but everything you guys do is largely procedural. I mean, it makes a lot of sense if we're going to pursue something like BHRT. Could we do it in a more procedural model than maybe a more, I'm not going to say medical, but like medical model. So again, can I put a pellet in, say, how you feeling? Fantastic, great. See you in a few months kind of thing. I think, again, we could argue on the flip side for the patient side of things. It makes a lot of sense. I don't have to come back and see you all the time. It's just going to be in there. I don't have to remember or forget to take my medication, whether it's a cream or a troche or a tablet or injection or whatever. It's just in me all the time, 24/7, until I have to go get it taken out or replaced or whatever. Again, I think these models have their benefits. I've seen a lot of very successful practices do really well with them. What I've seen, and I think the market has been showing this a little bit to be true. I think they're going to start falling off a little bit. I think it was really, really popular back in the day, especially when BHRT was like, kind of super fringe still. But we're seeing, the modern medicine even kind of now adopting HRT. We've seen massive changes on the FDA front for both men and women. And I think we're going to probably continue seeing those changes over the next few years. So in one sense, HRT is going to start also being, I think commoditized is the right word. It technically is commoditized. It's just nobody in conventional medicine does it. So it's then left to us, wellness and aesthetics people to kind of take over. But as these things start becoming more and more mainstream, commoditized, what have you, it doesn't mean that we can't continue profiting and doing really well with them. It just might mean that certain models are just not going to stick. You're going to have patients saying, I don't want a pellet. Like, I want the stuff that, the gurus on Instagram or TikTok are talking about. And largely that's not pellets. It's going to be your creams and injections and troches and things like that. And so anyways, I'll leave it there. Maybe. Does that sound about familiar to you guys?
Yeah, well, I think you're making a good point that maybe some people in the webinar don't realize, which is these turnkey programs are pretty much exclusively pellet based.
Mm-hmm.
One, I think one question I have of things that I hear is that some of these turnkey companies even have like non-compete saying you can't actually order from any other pharmacy, or you can't use other modalities outside per se, like creams or other things like that, using other options. Have you heard that at all?
Yes, that's true. I mean, BioTE is a good example of that. And again, I'm not like inside of BioTE looking at all their ins and outs, but yeah, largely they're going to have non-competes. They may even have it set up to where, again, they're going to try to profit significantly off you guys. So they'll kind of nickel and dime you to death on a lot of different things. Again, if you're brand new to business, you probably wouldn't even notice that. It's in these fine asterisks and details and stuff. But again, from a business point of view, I also, I think, and Cassie and Suze feel the same way. Like we want to prevent you from being, I'm going to use the word preyed upon. I mean, a lot of these companies, and to be honest, you probably see it even more in aesthetics than I do in the wellness industry, but a lot of these companies are predators. Like they are trying to get you to buy every machine and every sparkly new thing that comes across your purview and tell you every single patient wants it, and they're going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. And we know that's probably the number one thing that puts most people out of business, especially in the aesthetics and wellness space. So I think that is another reason why I'm not super attracted to those types of models. Like, we went into business because you wanted to get out of the rat race. You wanted to keep people from, standing on you, so to speak, and calling all the shots. You want to try to keep as much of your hard-earned, revenue and profits as possible. And again, using some of these companies, it's just going to leave you in a sour place, especially if you start really building and growing.
Yeah, smart at minimum to have these contracts looked over by your own lawyer to understand, because you're not gonna know some of these loopholes. They have lots of lawyers, especially when you're new. You don't know what you don't know, right? And I see that with the aesthetics ones all the time. They're like, oh, well, you're just a NP or just a nurse or whatever. It's like, don't worry your pretty little head about all this business stuff. We got that for you. But then you next thing you know, you wake up a year later, you've traded in a hospital boss for a MLM boss, right? So I think it's just, yes, to your point, there's lots of these offerings. More often than not, the provider is unfortunately getting the short end of the stick. So it's more of a beware. And if you do want to enter into something like that, make sure you're protecting yourself by bringing your own kind of legal advisors.
I also want to just touch on the whole concept of what commoditization means, because I think that might be a word that people don't fully get. And that really is like when you're competing on price, like everyone is price shopping because everyone's offering the same thing. And one thing that we see in aesthetics, and I'm sure we see it in BHRT as well, is that you've got to compete on experience. What are you offering that the patient values that isn't a price thing? Because if you are competing on price, it's a race to the bottom, which is why you can never be like, we're $8 Botox. It's never going to work. And we're going to be the low cost leader for BHRT as well, because there's no place to go with that.
Yep, that's well said.
All right. Should I look at the next one?
Susie,
All right. So
this one.
common pitfalls practices run into in launching and how to avoid them. I'm sure Nico's seen a lot of this, and we've seen, while we're not BHRT experts, we've seen lots of common problems with people launching their aesthetics practice, not least of which we just touched on, which is that they get involved with a turnkey model and they don't realize how little they're generating for the amount of effort that they're putting in and how tied they are contractually. I've seen contracts where you have a non-compete with the service provider for a year. Like you can't even go, once you leave them, you can't even go offer your services in aesthetics necessarily, and maybe even BHRT. The other thing I think we've seen is that people don't really have a plan. They're like, I'm just going to offer this. They're kind of spitballing, and there's no plan to what they're going to do. And just because the classic line we have is, if we build it, they don't come. Like it isn't Field of Dreams out there. Just hanging a shingle saying, hey, I offer BHRT is not good enough.
Yeah,
Nico, what do you think?
I totally agree. I think probably, I mean, you nailed it pretty well. I think, especially in the aesthetics world, you know, if I'm doing consultations with aesthetics providers, probably the number one thing that I've seen most commonly is, honestly, no matter which model you go, whether you went with BioTE or whether you're kind of doing it on your own or whatever, what I find a lot of aesthetics practices get caught up with is, all of a sudden, again, you're kind of maybe more used to this procedural type of business where, again, and this is not a like comparison of like, you guys are just hair salon stylists, but I like to think of aesthetic practices as like a hair salon, right? We've got people coming in the door, you do their hair, you do an amazing job, and they leave, and then the next person comes in. It's very hands-on and procedural. All of a sudden, when you start adding in BHRT, it becomes a lot more, and I'm not saying you guys aren't doing it, you guys are doing medicine. It becomes much more medical, in the much more medical sense, where all of a sudden you have tons of patients and they have tons of questions and problems. And, oh, my ankles are swelling. And, oh my gosh, my nipples are sensitive. Oh my, like all these things start coming up. If you don't have a receptionist, or maybe one or two of them, that can get really, really taxing really quickly. You're still trying to do procedural things. If you're booked, back to back to back, when are you going to get to these patients? And so again, that is one thing that I found a lot of practices, whether you're big or small, a lot of practices suffer around that. So when I talk to these clinics or practices or whatever you want to call them, I usually recommend, look, you need to have someone who's like dedicated to this. And again, it could be still, they might be still doing some aesthetics procedures on the side, but they are your go-to gal or guy when it comes to the HRT side of things. They are answering the questions. They're putting in the refills. You're going to be doing a ton of that. They're constantly trying to market that kinds of stuff. And then again, you need your support staff. You need to have receptionists who are now totally capable of answering a lot of big questions really quickly, triaging, getting those patients to the right person. So I mean, that alone, I think, is one of the biggest pitfalls that I've seen for a lot of these practices. Again, you're right. No matter what model you go with, whether you nail the model, if you're not prepared to handle the actual kind of medical side of BHRT, it's going to kind of fall short.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Cassie and I both have nurse practitioners who are our point person on this, and people kind of fill in peripherally, and we have front desk. But as we know, when you're starting, it's a one-man show. We don't want to dissuade you from thinking you can't do that, but just know that as you grow and scale, like that differentiation is a good thing. Like having one person that is the super user sort of thing of BHRT and the owner of that is, I think, super important to success.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think it's just BHRT is a much wider skill set than I think oftentimes we're used to. When you bring on a skill like injecting Botox, I would say injecting Botox is more of a skill, right?
Mhm.
Whereas being a BHRT provider has such wider, it's Botox very procedural, muscles relaxing, right? I would say BHRT is much wider in a whole skill set instead of just one thing. It feels, I think we approach it as it's just one thing, and that you make a good point that it is a lot more complex, and you're really getting into medical management. You just accidentally find yourself doing more medical management than you thought you would because they're all connected.
Yeah, it's really high touch.
It is. I love that, Cassie. I mean, I think that's right. I think, and again, I think that's where some of these pellet companies play on, right? Is like, oh, okay, we'll keep this in that more like it's just a procedure. It takes you 3 seconds. You can learn it in a weekend. And again, even with you'll still find that when you run into problems, I mean, it becomes mountains out of molehills really fast.
Mhm.
And these companies are all of a sudden going to ghost you when you need them the most, kind of thing, like a lot of these companies do. And so it's another reason you don't want to take BHRT lightly. No different than you guys would hate it if I was like, hey, guess what? I did 4 hours training of Botox and now I can just fill and tox everybody's face left and right because I'm an expert. You would laugh at me and be like, dude, there's way much to this than that. And that's how HRT is too. And I think that's where again you really want to become masterful at that, or at the very least have just a very good understanding of what you're getting into.
Absolutely. And maybe not be all things to all people, right? Like kind
Right.
of, specialize in one area instead of offering all the things. We tell people that all the time. I kind of joke, I'm like, only suck at one thing at a time, right? So if you feel confident in your Botox skills and you've got your business down and you're ready to layer something in, then maybe you do just women perimenopause and you start with that. But you're not being a testosterone clinic, you're not doing pellets, you're not doing, perimenopause care, you're not managing thyroid on top of it all. Like one thing at a time, friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and speaking to that, Suze, I mean, I mean, that's another common pitfall, right? And I mean, this is just
Hmm.
common in business in general, which is I started an aesthetics practice. I'm not making any money. I know I'll buy $100,000 laser because that's going to bring patients. And then
Right.
I'm going to add BHRT and then, oh, shoot, I'll just add vitamins and stuff. And now all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm still not making money, but I have all these expenses and I'm not very good at any of these things. So again, another huge pitfall. Like, yeah, get really
Yes,
good at your whatever your thing is, and before you start adding in those kind of supplemental adjunct things.
totally.
All right. Tell us what's behind door number three. Love it.
I love.
I
So I just saw the question, and now we have the answer. Here we
Yeah.
go.
So this is actually a big one. It is
Hmm.
harder to make BHRT profitable than I expected when we brought it on. It is a lot easier to make aesthetics be profitable right out the gate. I think you have to be incredibly thoughtful on how you structure your program because you are up against like, well, why don't I just get this from, my OBGYN will give me an estrogen patch, why can't I just go there? Or we've had people where we've gotten them, maybe set up with the right prescriptions for them and then they're like, okay, I'm good now. My OBGYN said they'll just refill them. So I think being profitable, and that's of course what all of Summit is really about. When we see you guys in Orlando, this is the type of stuff we really are going to deep dive,
Yes,
and we're going to be leaning on Nico to really hit this one full bore, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more superficially today just to get some high points. But Nico, can you clarify, in your practice, do
Yeah.
you accept insurance at all? And can you just speak a little bit at that higher level to
Yeah.
this whole big topic, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. This is a good one. So I don't accept any insurance. So it's purely private pay, cash pay, whatever you want to call it. And that's how we've started, and that's how we've continued to do it. Cass, you're exactly right. It is not the easy. I mean, if you want to make a ton of money quickly and all the time, like BHRT is not necessarily going to be that for you. It is demanding. And again, it's becoming more and more popular, which by the way, I'm super thankful for that. I love that, other providers are taking this on, even on the conventional side. But I like to tell people to not worry about that. Like there is so much separation between you and an OB-GYN who says, oh, I can do an estradiol patch. It's not even funny. So I think for a profitable BHRT practice from a wellness clinic to an aesthetics clinic is probably going to be radically different, and it ought to be. So, for example, HRT in my clinic is the bread and butter. Like that's how we make a living, and it's all we talk about, and it's all we do all day long. We have our adjunct would be like weight loss, for example, or like different types of peptides. We offer sick care visits, right? So again, we're a little bit more on the medical wellness side of things. If I'm in aesthetics practice, again, like we talked about just a few minutes ago, I want to be known for aesthetics. I don't want to be known for BHRT. BHRT should always be this is a secondary thing we do, to enhance the overall experience, which I think is amazing and super necessary. And in fact, I hope BHRT makes those patients stick to the aesthetic side more, right? Rather than vice versa. Like I'm not looking, that's how I would want to structure it in my practice. So coming from an aesthetic lens, I think this is where it gets a little bit tricky. You might look to some of these wellness clinics who are charging like, wow, that's a lot. They might be doing monthly recurring membership or, yearly retainer fees or things like that. And you might say, oh, I could charge that too. You might get some people to buy on that, and maybe you just need a handful of people or want that. If you want a whole lot more, you're probably going to need to make sure that you're not outpricing your aesthetics side of things, right? So again, there's that tightrope of, okay, I'm an aesthetics practice first. I want to make sure my patients are using that service primarily and predominantly before I then push them in other directions like weight loss or like HRT or like anything else. So I've seen this. I've seen 1,000. Honestly, I've seen 1,000 different pricing models and structures and stuff, and I've seen a lot of different people do really really well with way different programs. But I like to maybe think about it in like three big categories. So one would be some type of like membership slash retainer model. And that might look like again, that might not be too much in an aesthetics practice. It might be, hey, we charge whatever, $1,500 a year. And what does that include? That includes our time and attention and service. And we're gonna knock this out of the park for you, and we're gonna be there 24/7, and we're gonna answer your text messages and all that stuff. And now maybe I'm going to send your medications to a compounding pharmacy, or maybe you're okay with sending it to a retail pharmacy. I personally wouldn't want to do that, but some practices do that, and that's fine. So the patients pay for their meds separately, right? You're literally like a lawyer. Here's my retainer fee. This is just to work with me. Anything outside of that, it's on you. Some patients love that because they like knowing, okay, I've paid that off. I've got them on my team, and now I get to maybe have a little bit more say in how I spend my money for meds. So, oh, I don't want to spend whatever $60 for capsules from this compounding pharmacy. I'd rather spend $20 at Walgreens. Fine. It's none of my concern. I'm totally fine with that. The other model would be more kind of more like a membership model, which is kind of what we do. And again, it might be a little bit more difficult in an aesthetics practice, although I've seen some of it do it. But that might look like, hey, for this bigger fee, we take over everything. We will play pharmacy. We will play everything. We pay for the meds. You're simply paying us for our service. We'll get you any med you want, basically, but it's all going to come from my compounding pharmacy. So it could be troches, capsules, injections, whatever. I don't care how much you take or how little you take. And again, I kind of look at that more like a kind of like a buffet, meaning I don't care if you take one medicine. I don't care if you take five. It doesn't matter to me. I'm willing to go and take this journey with you, knowing that most of my patients are probably going to take, again, if we're talking females, estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone. That's going to be the widest range of meds. And I'm going to make really, really good money If most people take that, I might make not as good of money. If some patients take a little bit more, I might make a ton of money if some people take a little bit less, but I don't really care. It's fine by me. If you offer that kind of service, though, it's going to be a lot of money and you're going to need to find other ways to make that really awesome. So I don't know, maybe if you're in an aesthetics practice, that could mean, hey, maybe we'll knock a percentage off or two on X, Y, or Z service from the aesthetic side so we can make it kind of more of a thing. It could be vice versa. Maybe you have a membership model for your aesthetics practice and we'll take some money off if you do the HRT thing. But again, try not to outshine your big service. Like don't make this a competition now, like a competition within your own business. Make it clear that this is a wonderful add-on thing. You don't have to do it, but I highly recommend you do. And it's gonna make all this stuff work even better. So I'll stop rambling, but does that help at all?
Yeah, I think you hit on something really important too, which is this is great crossover. You're going to get aesthetics people crossing over into BHRT. You're going to encourage BHRT people to come over to your aesthetics. Nico, in your practice, are you doing like, it sounds like maybe you're doing some primary care and, or that's my question. Are you doing any primary care? And like, how much are you getting into like peptides?
Yeah, so it's a great question. We don't do any primary care. What we do
Okay.
is sick visits. So we like to call it urgent care light. Anything I can do over the phone or over video, I'll treat. We find that to be an amazing service. So most of the patients who are probably coming to see you folks, just like the patients who are coming to see me, most of them are actually pretty health conscious compared to maybe your average American going elsewhere, or they're striving to be that. A lot of times they're like, I don't like my primary care. They're awful. I can't ever see them. When I talk to them, they always belittle me or make me feel like I'm dumb because I do Botox and I do hormones. So most of my patients are already like, you're my primary care. And I tell them, no, I'm not, but I appreciate what you're saying. And then quickly it turns into, well, like, what if I just need like an antibiotic for like a sinus infection? Or what if my kid has pink eye and I get pink eye? Could I call you? And for a while we were hemmed and hawed about it. And then it became obvious, like, what a great added feature. We can do this in a 5-minute phone call. It takes me 3 seconds to order whatever. As far as like, okay, sure. If you're like, I haven't been in urgent care, I've never done that. It's not hard. Like you guys do way harder things every single day than prescribing, oral antibiotics. And again, it's a great added value piece. We offer 3 sick visits a year. That's it. So it's not endless amounts of sick visits. We're very clear what we treat. If you come in with a broken arm, we're not going to treat you. If you come in with, I'm short of breath and my heart hurts, like go to the hospital. We are going to treat that easy peasy, obvious stuff. And patients love it. We then, if let's say you use up your 3 sick visits and whatever the first half of the year, the second half you get a cold again. Can you still see Nico? Sure, we'll charge you for it.
Yeah,
Like the
I could
price,
see
right?
there being a lot of value there, and you're not, as long as if this is your background and you feel completely comfortable doing this, how
Yeah,
this could be, it's a differentiator, right? It's a unique
yeah.
value proposition. And that might not be the same for other people on this call, but there is something, we all have that unique value proposition. Do you have different tiers of your membership, Nico, or is it all just like to be a part of under our care? This is the one fee that we charge you monthly.
Ooh, that's a good question. I did tiers for like a little, maybe a year, a little under a year. Specifically for my female patients, and mostly because honestly I did it because everybody else was doing it, kind of thing. What does that mean? So the tiers look something like if you take 1 hormone, it costs this much. If you take 2 hormones, it costs this much. If you take 3 hormones, right? So it's a price escalation. Now, logically, that makes sense to people. Okay, right? The more hormones I take, the more expensive it gets. But what I found probably subconsciously going on in my patients' heads, because we got this question a lot, was, well, wait a second. I thought if you're paying for the meds, then why does this cost more? Right? What I don't understand. You said you pay for the medications, which is cool. I get that. You said that the fee is the fee, but then all of a sudden, I'm doing fine, and now my libido's terrible, and now you tack on testosterone, but oops, it's going to cost you an extra $50 a month. And then I started hearing my providers telling women like, well, it's more to manage. And, they're looking at them like, it's really not, it's not that hard, guys. I don't know. I didn't love it. I didn't like the feeling of like, well, so what is it like? So that's when I said, you know what? No, I'm going to just go in at one fee. And now I also got rid of these awkward conversations because a female from the age of 30 to 50 is like, they're going to change meds like 1,000 times. And I hated that conversation of like, hey, you know how you've been paying me tons of money? Well, you're going to pay me even a little bit more now because we added one stinking med. And again, 3 months in, they're going to be like, this guy's not doing anything differently. It's not like he's staying up at night reading about my problems. So I just went to one flat fee. And again, for me personally, it's been phenomenal. It's been absolutely phenomenal. Um,
We
my
definitely have people popping off in the chat asking if you're open to sharing what it is that you charge for your monthly fee.
Babies, you can go online. You can go to apollohealthop.com. I share out my services are right there. Literally Apollo Health OP, like Apollo Health Optimization, apollohealthop.com. If you go to services, you can see the male and female. You'll see everything we offer right
That's
there.
a good way to get some good SEO.
Yeah,
Everybody
nice
I'm
job.
fine with it.
check
I'm
out.
Put your price shop,
all
price
the
shop
web.
away.
I
The
like
last thing,
like where your head is at. Do
Yeah.
you, before we go to the last question, before we hop onto the last question, is are you offering much GLP-1s as a part of is kind of your guys' bread and butter BHRT and GLP-1s? How much of your practice is GLP-1?
Yeah, that's a good question. A good amount of it is GLP-1, but it is not our bread and butter at all. So again, that was another thing. So I charge a lot for I charge a lot for HRT. I really do. I'm on the more expensive. I think I'm on the more expensive side. However, I think we add a lot of excellent value there. So our patients stick. The other thing I wanted to make sure of was I want people to have the ability to use these GLPs because they're amazing. And they're what a great like combination, GLP and HRT, right? And other peptides too, by the way. Well, I don't need to make 3,000% profit off of these GLP-1 meds. I make great money off my HRT, and I'm not a weight loss clinic. I'm totally okay, making still amazing. Like my margins on those medications are ridiculous. Like I can still make really great money, but again, I can now compete on GLP-1 meds against a lot of these weight loss clinics because I'm not interested in making a ton of money off of GLP. I'm interested in keeping HRT patients because they're actually the ones that stay with you forever. GLP-1s, most patients within 3 to 6 months, they're off. Within a year, they're off. I mean, like the long-term progression of GLP is not much. So I'd much rather keep a patient who's interested in taking HRT for the rest of their life. And then how can I feed other things in to make that even sweeter?
Love it.
Right.
Oh, right. Oh, we love compliance, don't we? I mean, come on. Key compliance issues. Let's talk about it. And anyone who's spent any time with us at Injectables EDU know that compliance is super duper important. And one thing that we see, especially with new practices, with getting everything up and going, the last thing you're always, necessarily thinking about are those critical SOPs. And if anyone's been through, an investigation, you've got to have them. And so what's that look like? How do you maintain not only your standards of care, how are you, staying within your scope of practice, depending on what your licensure is? Because we see lots of, gaps in knowledge and then on execution of staying within their scope of practice, which is really sometimes hard to know based on state to state. But, Nico, what do you see?
I probably see, and by the way, like I probably still am one of those business owners who I do not find compliance. I don't know if a lot of us do, but I don't find compliance or operational stuff very sexy, and
Yeah.
I'm not very good at it. So I just ignore it to my own fault. And we actually, we've now hired people to help us with this stuff, which has been unbelievably awesome. Like if you
Yeah.
guys don't work with lawyers, or there are literally people, they don't necessarily even have to be lawyers, like medical compliance gals out there who just are amazing at helping you get set up for success. They're worth absolutely its weight in gold. The amount of people I've consulted with who've gotten sued or written up to the board for just the goofiest things.
Yeah.
And look,
It's almost it's so dumb, some of
it's
the
so
things.
dumb. And I tell people this all the time. Like, you should almost go. One of my business mentors told me this, and I thought it was great advice because it really took a lot of pressure off in some ways. But like, if you're in business, it's not a matter of if, but when you're going to
When,
get sued.
yes.
And like, just expect it. And when it happens, hopefully you don't have to freak out because you have nothing to protect you.
Yeah.
It's just a like the same way we probably would all agree, like you should not be doing your own bookkeeping and accounting. And if, especially once you start really growing, please don't attempt to do your own compliance stuff
Right.
for your own clinic.
Well,
Like,
and that's why we bring on, partners like Lingia that have infinite amount of, support in this area and have documentation that they can help you with. And I'll plug that at Summit, we'll have one-on-ones available for some of you who we've just, put fear into your heart of, oh my God, it's an if, but it's a when, not if situation. Well, good news. You can go in prepared and be able to sleep at night knowing that you've got, support and help. Yeah, should you need it. And also doing your best that you can, which intention goes a long ways in all this, is that you're doing the best you can.
uh-huh.
Everyone, we're all small business owners. So,
When
so
And I'll,
for
definitely,
those, yeah, for those of you that are attending Summit, with your ticket, we'll be sending out these great slots that you can sign up to sit down one-on-one with your unique stuff with Langia, like a lawyer
mhm,
from Langia Law, and some opportunities to sit down, like have your website shredded with Megan. We've got some really cool one-on-one opportunities at Summit where you can really get like unique to your own situation.
and
that's
with
so cool.
lawyer
I love
fees
that.
being
I
like
want one.
super expensive. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can,
you can
guess
have
what?
one.
You get one too.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so cool. I'll
Yeah.
mention this too. This was another thing. Again, a mentor of mine mentioned. The compliance and operational stuff. Again, it doesn't always feel super sexy, but in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, when and if you ought to be selling your very profitable and sustainable practice, and you've
Mhm.
got jack all for
Yeah.
paperwork and compliance stuff. None of these companies, whether it's a PE firm or just a local med clinic, like none of them want to buy something that feels empty or hollow. Like they
Right.
expect you to come in hot with all the things necessary so they can buy and move on without you.
Absolutely. I can say that, being involved with that side of things as well. And we'll have Audrey Neff from Aviva Aesthetics, which is a MSO that is looking to partner with med spas that want to exit at some point. So you can ask those questions of what is it that you're looking for and how do you build, to create an asset, not just a job for yourself. And one of the key things is creating these systems and processes of a sustainable business so that you aren't the key piece to it. You are plug and play because you have such amazing systems. Anyone who has your skill set can be put into that role and that business can succeed. That is real business success.
You go one last compliance question before we kind of start to wrap things. Can you speak a little bit about, what you're hearing with peptides and
Mm.
compliance
Mm-hmm.
and getting reported for using like peptides that are not FDA approved or
Yeah.
research or, the, newest research only GLP-1s. Do you have any opinion on any of that?
I do have many personal opinions. I'll for safety's sake, I'm not a lawyer and I'm the dumbest guy alive. So take everything I say with a word of salt, or a grain of salt. The peptide thing is, I think, actually much more clear than people make it out to be. So
Mm-hmm.
first and foremost, if it is a research use only, or this is like talk about predatory, if it's physician use only, which is
Ooh.
not a real thing, that just means it's research use only, and they took the word research and put in physician to make it sound nicer. That is just no. You don't use it ever. You
Mhm.
can't, period. Like, end of story. Like that's 110% illegal. You'll end up in court and die in jail somewhere. Like, don't do that. When it comes to peptides being manufactured from like a 503A compounding pharmacy, that gets a little bit different. So then we have our FDA approved peptides, which everybody knows about. That could be insulin, that could be a GLP-1, that could be oxytocin, technically, is it right? So like there's well-known tesamorelin, like those are all FDA approved peptides. Now, once you move into the compounding world, okay, now we add a little bit of grayness, which is, are compounding pharmacies legally allowed to produce any or all of these peptides? And the answer is yes, maybe sometimes. The GLP-1s, right now, they're a yes. Tesamorelin, kind of a gray area, but technically yes. How about BPC 157? According to the FDA, it's a no.
Mhm.
So to be even more clear on that, the gray area part is still there though, because it's a no for those pharmacies. It doesn't necessarily mean it's always a no for us. We're medical providers. We have our own state board. It is up to us to determine whether or not this thing, which is experimental, technically speaking, is applicable to our patients, and we give them enough informed consent, and we have the, big cojones to say, hey, I'm willing to bet on this and hope that this goes well. So again, it's still a gray area, but if anybody's going to get in huge trouble, it's going to be those compounding pharmacies first, and then it would kind of maybe have a trickle down effect. So again, that's a super oversimplification, but I hope that's helpful.
Well, it's good because it's a complicated subject. It's hard to understand. I think that the also, like you said, if you're going to choose to do any of this stuff, you better have the legal support and the help to do it. Because things are frequently changing, right? Whatever we say today is not going to be true in a few months. That's the only thing we know for sure. Because when that clarification does come and something goes from being gray to black and white, you better, or the first example is made of this gray thing, then you've got to quickly get that information and pivot. But that was a great explanation of it. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Wow, you guys, we have covered so much information in just a short period of time, and we're going to cover a little bit more. We've got some questions that have come in. I'm going to give everybody on the line just another moment or two to submit any last minute questions before we hop into the Q&A. And I'm going to take that time to just bring up Summit again because I can't get enough of it. I can't get enough of talking about Summit. I'm super excited. Cassie and Suzanne, I was really curious to ask you, this is going to be your fourth Injectables EDU Summit. What are you most excited about for this year specifically?
Suze, you go first. Suze
Well, I
was the
think,
visionary behind the summit, so I'm going to let
yeah,
you.
but this was my half-baked idea, 5, 6 years ago. I'm like, you know what we should do is a conference. And then Cassie was like, yeah, we should totally do that. And I think there was probably some bourbon involved. And so then like we did it. And here we are 4 years later. But I mean, number one thing that gets us super excited is just building the community and getting everyone together, like-minded individuals who are all trying to do the same great thing, for themselves and for their practice and for their patients, is just the best thing ever. And then every year we just keep bringing more and more amazing friends of Injectables EDU, like Nico, like Audrey. We've had amazing speakers in the past, like Rana, that we just get to have such like close connections with them. We're not going to this giant conference that's trying to like peddle shit to you constantly. And you are the commodity and they're just trying to sell you another laser or another skin cream or like whatever. We're really just trying to give you tools that are actionable, useful, pertinent, and not predatory. Oh, and have fun because Chelsea's hilarious.
Thank you.
She'll be our MC there. Yeah.
Yes.
I agree. I think that if you're on this call, if you're already a business owner, it can be a bit isolating. And I think having that community, we have people from the previous summits that are like, I talked to this person that, became my friend at Summit every day, and they are their sounding board. That is what is missing in this community. I'm really excited too that we have a lot more like takeaways of like you're going to fill out your own KPI sheet, a lot more just like really practical stuff that you can immediately go home and implement, and we keep it fresh every year. So one other cool thing I've seen is like we have people that have been to every summit so far because they're continuing to see new fresh value each year. I also just want to point out who specifically Summit is for, and it's for if you've already, at least at minimum, if you're a nurse or you're an APRN and you have already taken either your intro Botox class and you're just getting started, great, but you need to have at least had some sort of foundational course. We have the Nail It track and the Scale It track. So Nail It is, hey, I'm in my first year, I'm kind of just getting started. Scale It is, I'm really like off to the races, and this is maybe already my full-time gig, and I'm really trying to scale and growing to hire the next person, or I'm trying to get my practice uh, smartly ready to sell down the road and more of these advanced things. So I think it's just really helpful to know exactly who Summit is for. So if that describes you're in one of those categories, you know this is like the one thing you should do this year.
Yeah, and for anybody who's on the line who might be on the fence if Summit is or isn't a good fit for you, Cassie and Suzanne do offer free 20-minute mentoring calls where you guys can
Mhm.
schedule those with them and kind of talk through any questions you might have, any hesitations you might have. Let us convince you to come party with us in Orlando in April. So we will send out the link to sign up for those calls as soon as this webinar is ended. And then Nico, this is going to be your first summit, but once you come once, you can't stop coming back. So
Mm-mm.
can I ask you, could you give us a little preview of what we can expect from you there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna help deep dive a little bit more on number one, why you should have BHRT in your practice, which I think we covered a little bit of that today, and then more specifically, how can you do this in a way that is actually profitable and scalable and hopefully something you end up loving, not something you hate. So I think that HRT is it's in the zeitgeist now, and I think now is such a great time to add this to your practice. And so I want to like empower you and encourage you to do that, and hopefully in a way that also makes the most sense to you and your patients and your growth and all that. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be joining you guys. I was just telling before we hopped on the webinar, like these kinds of events are like Christmas to me. So like expect lots of high fives and all that kind of stuff for me. I love it.
And
Love the energy.
we
It is
certainly
going
will.
to be.
Yeah, we'll let you, Nico, give all your info before we eventually sign off, but we know exactly where to send people when they do want to train on BHRT, and that's to HRTU, which is your training that's very extensive on starting up BHRT, which is so awesome. We
Yeah,
get
yeah.
lots of rave reviews, including from our office.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
It's going to be a great one. And I teased this a bit at the beginning of the webinar, and I'm not going to let you guys down. So we are
Mhm.
giving you $400 off your summit ticket. It wouldn't be right to sell you on it so much without giving you a little bit of help to get there. So we want to make it easy for everyone to be able to come. You can use code FEB400 when you're checking out to get $400 off your ticket. You can screenshot this now and we'll send it in the email when we follow up after the webinar, so no worries. But take advantage of this deal. It ends February 28th or when all 35 tickets available at this price run out. And I do think I actually have seen that number change from 35 to 30 since I made this slide. So
Yay.
yes, act quickly, you guys. Lock down your tickets with this price before they go up at the end of February. It is going to be a great time. You're going to get to see Cassie, Suzanne, Nico, me. We have so many great speakers, so many great sponsors, just tons of people that you guys can learn and grow from. So
Yeah,
it's going
we're
to be
currently doing buy one ticket, get one half off. So that can be for another business owner that you know, or business friend, or somebody from your own practice. So snag that too.
it's going to be a party.
That
Mhm.
that it always is.
It's gonna
No
be a
problem
party.
there.
And we have a little bit of time left on our party right now, so I'm gonna get to the Q&As. We had so many great questions come in. I'll try and get to as many as we can before the hour comes up.
Mhm.
I'll start with something that hopefully is a little bit of an easier question. What is your take on oral testosterone?
If that's for me,
Yes.
Yes.
I like it. I like it. I don't love it. For women, actually, it's amazing. And I think I would hope maybe if the big pharma and maybe compounders get wise enough to pursue that a little bit more. So Kazatrix or Kyzatrix, however you want to pronounce it, Jatenzo is the other one. Those formulations are amazing because again, it kind of slowly releases the testosterone, which is ideal. Um, for men, it doesn't get to the, let's say, peak concentrations that are generally necessary for complete symptom resolution. So if you're 85 years old, it probably would give you a little bit of oomph, but I don't see it outperforming in any way, shape, or form the typical like injectable or topical creams or gels. There are like testosterone troches. Again, those I don't those I like even less than like the actual oral, so like the Kyzatrix and stuff. The troches For most women, again, typically you would need to take at least 2 to maybe even 3 doses a day.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so, yeah, it has a very sharp like peak and trough and peak and trough. So, yeah, it's not my favorite.
All right.
Good to know. Okay, all right. For our next question, I know we talked a little bit about structuring your program and the different tiers and fees that you might use, but the question I've got is it best to offer the monthly program fee and then charge separately for the cost of medication or labs? Or do you think it makes more sense to create a program fee that bundles every charge that they would incur together?
Again, so I'll speak candidly. I've seen practices do go both directions and crush. So I don't think there's totally a wrong answer there. From my perspective, one of the things I hate is like decision fatigue.
Hmm.
If I have to think about, okay, I owe Nico X amount of dollars per month, but then I also get these, whatever, monthly, whatever, every 90 days, I'm getting a bill from so and so pharmacy. And then I'm kind of like calculating all this up. And wow, it feels like a lot. I just I don't like that very much. I don't like the nickel and diming feel to that. I'd much rather say, let us take care of it. We'll take care of it all. And we'll be sure that even though that price might be a little bit more, we're going to make sure that we meet that with whatever other value adds we can throw in there.
Yep. And then on that note, with so many different components of the program, do you have any best practices or system recommendations for what you use to keep track of your clients, your follow-ups, the labs, the refills, everything that falls under that umbrella?
Hmm. That would be like a 2 hour response, but let me give you the
Ooh.
skinny. No, I think having some sort of whether it's a CRM or I've seen practices do really well with even like a Asana, which is like a software, like a project management type of software. As long as you have something like that where you're housing SOPs, you're able to house your sort of compliance paperwork and things of that nature, HR stuff. If you start getting into employees and whatnot, like that can be really helpful from the clinic side of things. I mean, gosh, I can tell you what I do. I mean, we have, I think, a pretty good system. We're pretty system heavy. So, we have, for example, we use Spruce, which is, pennies on the dollar for what it is. It's a messaging platform, and we can tag each other and schedule messages and things of that nature within Spruce. That makes it really easy for things like refills. We don't have really anything super fancy when it comes to refills. I know some practices that have these like huge spreadsheets and they're tracking all the meds and when this person's refill would be up. That's a full-time job. Maybe
Hmm.
if your practice gets to that scale, you could pursue that. I just feel like it's such a headache. I don't like automating, especially controlled substances. Like, I don't think that's a very good idea. So that's one of the few things we kind of like gently leave on our patients to let us know when they need a refill. But we do have little reminders like, hey, patient so and so, it's about 2, 3 months in. It's time to get him in to see him for blood work and see how he's doing. And then typically we're going to ask about refills then anyway. So we just try to keep those things. We try to be high touch. Like the more high touch we can be, the better. And again, as long as we can schedule and systematize it, it's not a headache. It actually works out really well.
Great.
Amazing. Another question I got is, what are your tips on how to prevent people from just going to their PCP after the initial consult? How do you keep them with you after that first time they see you?
Um, so to be really clear on like what I mean by added value, obviously like the sick visit thing is a big one, right? Like our patients really love that. That's a huge one. We we kind of take the approach of and I don't remember if it was Suze or Cassie who said it in the beginning, like the experience, the whole patient journey. So we have like this was based on Unreasonable Hospitality, which is like one of the best books ever. If you haven't read it, by Will Guidara, but we focus on that tremendously. So we have a Dream Weaver program, which was in the book, and essentially that could be something like my employees, all of them, whether they're a nurse practitioner, whether it's a receptionist, what have you, even some of my contractors, we say, okay, we have a monthly budget. It's whatever. I'm just $1,000 every single month. I put out $1,000, and any single one of you, you don't have to even come to me to ask. You get to use what that you don't have to use all the whole $1,000. But let's just say, God bless, Cassie's mom died last night. What a terrible thing, and she needed to reschedule her appointment. Nico, I went ahead and bought her some flowers and got her a card. So and so got pregnant and they're having a baby in 9 months. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and what she say she needed? Oh, a stroller. Fantastic. Go ahead and buy her one. Like we do those sorts of things all the time. And it doesn't even have to be big stuff. Like one of mine it was for I see some teenage girls for like PCOS and things like that. And this girl she was joking about how much chocolate she wished she could eat while she was on her periods and blah, blah, blah. And so we got her like a custom made chocolate, and it was in the letter P. And we said, something like PMS sucks, progesterone help, and so does chocolate. And we sent her that. And it cost us like $10 or something. It was nothing. But she thought that was so funny and she loved it. And she took a picture of it and she tagged us on Instagram and shared it to all her friends. And then we started seeing all kinds of new patients because they thought that was so cool. So I know that feels very esoteric, but it has done wonders for us. We don't lose patients. We rarely ever do. And honestly, we will every now and then have a patient who says, Nico, I can't make sense of this. My doctor's willing to do my HRT for pennies on the dollar, blah, blah, blah. I got to go with my OB-GYN. Hey, God love you. We hear you. Open door. We love you. If you want to come back anytime, we're happy to take you in. And we'll even send them a nice little letter of how much we appreciated them. And literally 6 months later, they're almost always coming back saying, well, that was a shit show. Like my doctor didn't even remember my name and she never sent my scripts. And when she did, it was like these synthetic progestins and I didn't want to take that. So it's not as hard as you think. I think it just takes a little bit more creativity, and that is way more fun than trying to also always add on some other service that just is probably going to end up hurting your heart and feelings more than just sending a card.
Yeah, absolutely. I just dropped in the chat the service that we use for that sometimes and just send a little something. It's really easy. Everyone in our office has the login so they can just send it.
I love that you send them a little note that's like, we've loved taking care of you, right? And like leaving that door open. That's really smart because it's not hard to compete on experience with a primary care office or with an OBGYN office. We've all been there. It's a miserable experience. And so that I think, competing on experience is the way to go with that for sure.
Absolutely. My doctor is going to have to answer some questions. I'm going to say, where is my chocolate?
That's right.
There, you guys have to step it up. All right. Well, you guys, that is our webinar. We are at time. I want to thank Nico so much for joining us today. We have learned so much from you and we are excited to learn even more at Summit. So thank you for your time today, Nico.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Seriously, thank you all very much. Thank you.
It has been so much fun. And thank you, Suzanne and Cassie. As always, it is a pleasure to do a webinar with you two ladies. For everyone on the line wondering what is next, as I have promised you a handful of times, we will send an email to you as soon as this wraps. You will get the replay link. You will get a link to join our Facebook group, a link to our free resources, a link to sign up for a mentoring call with Suzanne and Cassie if you have any questions. We will send you a link to learn more about Nico's HRT University. And then last but not least, we will be sending you that discount code so that you can snag your $400 off Summit while it is still here. So to everyone on the line with us, thank you so much for your time. That is our webinar. Enjoy the rest of your day.